Welcome to Looking for Owls with the Ocean State Bird Club. I'm Dan Berard, the president, and joining us we have Gina and Nichol of Sunrise Birding fame. Welcome everybody. We'll give a few minutes, make sure we have everyone, and then we'll get started. People coming in.
So Dan, we're up to about 24, 25 people at this point.
Great.
Excellent. So for those of you who are just joining us, welcome. Down at the bottom of your screen, you may see there's the chat option. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat. And at the end, I will present those questions to Gina. So if you have any questions, again, please utilize the chat box. Just type them in there and we'll get to them at the end. Thank you for joining us. Michael, how are we doing? Looks like we have...
We've got 25 participants, including you, Gina, and myself. And right now, nobody else is popping in. So maybe, how about another minute, Dan?
That sounds great.
Okay. For those who didn't know, we are going to record this presentation, and we will put this up onto our website, Ocean State Bird Club website, and that'll be marked with our YouTube channel. Okay.
Make sure to like, favorite, and subscribe, and hit that bell notification to join the notification squad to find out about more rare bird reports. I haven't been watching YouTube or anything lately. Cool. Shall we get
Dan,
started then?
ready, my friend.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, my name is Dan, and with us tonight we have a special guest, Gina Nichol of Sunrise Birding fame. Gina is the owner and operator of Sunrise Birding. She's also a naturalist that knows more than just birds. One of my favorite memories of Gina is her keying out orchids on the ground in Greece. So Gina really knows her stuff beyond owls, from owls to orchids. So Gina, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And thanks everybody for being here. I can't see you yet, but hopefully I'll stop sharing my screen at the end and I can see your faces. But I really do appreciate you being here. I know there were some other Zoom options tonight, but you chose to be with me looking for owls. So thanks a lot. It's been an amazing day here in Connecticut, very snowy. So I am in my living room here and I'm going to share with you what I have learned about looking for owls. So let's get started. So probably many of you tuning in share this love of owls, and I'm pretty sure you're going to get that from me tonight. I just think they're incredibly amazing creatures. And I've been fortunate to see many owls all over the world, and I just can't get enough of them. I have been diagnosed as a chronic birder by Al Batt. You might know Al Batt from, he's from Minnesota, I guess, and he writes for Birdwatchers Digest, and he's a storyteller. And I watched a talk that he gave a few weeks ago, and I realized I was a chronic birder. So he said, yes, indeed you are. So I'm a chronic birder. I'm birding all the time. When my eyes are open, I'm pretty much birding. And a lot of times for me, birding means looking for owls. And so I have had lots of experiences, which is what I want to share with you tonight. This is really based on my experiences in the field and what I've learned. So I hope it's helpful to you in your quest for owls. So I like to use some burning questions talks, things like, why is Diana Ross in a talk about owls? Yes, that's Diana Ross of the Supremes. She's in my talk. Eddie Munster's in my talk too. What's a plumicorn? And who doesn't love owls? And just spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking mostly about looking for owls during the day. I know you can go out at night and look for them, but I'm going to be talking about mostly daytime owl spotting. I'm going to talk about looking for owls without really using playback. And you know, playback is the bird calls that you have on your iPhone that you can play to draw in birds. I don't do that, so I'm not going to be talking too much about that. And I'm really going to be emphasizing minimizing disturbance of the birds that you're looking for. And we'll talk a lot about that. I'll be talking about owls of southern New England, so our owls, and also some owls from around the world. So who doesn't love owls? The owl family is just an amazing group of creatures, spanning in size from this huge great gray owl to the little tiny elf owl that you can find out in Arizona. This is a picture from Montana several years ago, and this owl was actually tending to a nest, bringing food into chicks. So it was very busy along the road, and it happened to sit on top of this road sign, watch for cows in the road. And I just love that picture. I love that pose. Owls are mysterious. Their nocturnal lifestyle is hard for us to understand sometimes, and they don't reveal themselves very easily. So perhaps that's what attracts us to owls. And they're beautiful and smart and adaptable. This is a Galapagos Short-Eared Owl. And this is a picture that I took several years ago in the Galapagos. And this one lives on Genovesa Island and has learned that there are storm petrels that also live on this island. And they come out of their burrows at dusk and go out to feed over the ocean. And so the Galapagos Short-Eared Owl has learned to hunt these birds. Incredible. And owls are diverse. There's at least 250 species of owl in the world. We have about 19 in the US and Canada. And as I said, they range in all shapes and sizes and lifestyles. From the gorgeous Pellets fishing owl, which is in Africa, in Namibia, which actually does live along riverbanks and feeds on fish and frogs, to the Barrow's eagle owl, also found in Africa, known for its pink eyelids. And even the chicks that look like they're singing opera, but they're really just calling for food, also have pink eyelids, the Barrow's eagle owl chicks. And there are owls that live underground. They either dig burrows or take over burrows of prairie dogs or other animals that live in the ground. The burrowing owl lives underground. Who knew? And there are owls that like to hunt from power lines. And when we go to Central America, Costa Rica, or Belize, we're always looking, if we're doing a night drive, at the power lines to see the striped owls that perch there overlooking the open fields where they hunt. So they are just incredible creatures. And many owls are out during the day. This is a Ferruginous Pygmy Owl, well known as a daytime active owl. It's a little tiny owl that you find in Central America and also the American Southwest. So when you find an owl in the wild, you find your own owl, it's really a thrill. And this is a picture of Gina's tree in Sherwood Island State Park in Connecticut, on the Connecticut coast here, where I found a great horned owl. And I'm not sure that the owl's in this tree right now. I went back and took a picture of the tree because they named it for me, because I found this great owl perching in it. And all I did was really look at the tree and look for odd dark shapes. And eventually I was able to find it. But when you find an owl on your own in the wild, it's really, really a thrill. So I'm going to talk about tonight how I got hooked on owls, which is very easy to do, the special skills you need when you're looking for them, how to keep the owls safe, traveling to see owls, because we of course do a lot of trips that involve owls, and what you can do conservation-wise to help owls. So that's what I have in mind tonight. So how I got hooked. I kind of started my career at the Audubon Center in Greenwich, Connecticut, in Southwest Connecticut, in late March of 1987. And I had the chance to work with this gentleman, Ted Gilman, who some of you might know. He's an amazing naturalist, and I learned a lot from him. But along about the last day of the first week I worked at the Audubon Center, we got a call from Anna Ross's estate. And the estate manager said there was a great horned owl nest that had fallen out of a big pine tree on her property. And there were 3 baby great horned owls on the ground and 2 very agitated adults up in the tree, and could we help? So we went down to Diana Ross's estate in Greenwich, and you may know that great horned owls don't really make their own nests. They take over nests of squirrels and maybe red-tailed hawks, and usually it's an old nest, so it's a little flimsy, and it's not all that unusual for the nest to fall apart. And that's what had happened here. So she has these pine trees around her estate. The nest has fallen down. The babies are on the ground. And I have to mention that baby great horned owls do end up on the ground normally as part of their life cycle. They leave the nest before they can fly and often will get down to the ground. And it's a very vulnerable time in their life, but it's a natural part of their life. But we could tell that Diana Ross's owls were way too young to be at that stage. So we had to find a way to fashion a nest and get it back up into the tree because the adult owls were there and we wanted them to take care of their own kids. So we found a bushel basket and Ted climbed up the tree wearing a helmet and fastened the basket into the tree. And then we put the 3 baby great horned owls in so that the parents could take care of them. All the time the parent owls were up above, very quiet, and we were really scared they were going to attack Ted, but they never did. They seemed to know we were trying to help them. So that was one of my early experiences with owls. Also at the Audubon Center, we had a wildlife rehabilitation program, and we worked with Buzz and Jean Seward, who took the orphaned and injured wildlife from us, and they also bred endangered species. And they had a couple of barn owls that were unreleasable. Those owls bred. And so they developed a program to release the chicks back into the wild to try to improve the barn owl population in Connecticut. So normally what happens is barn owls nest in barns and the chicks grow up in the barn, and then the adults are bringing in mice to a certain point until the chicks leave the barn and go out hunting on their own. But we didn't have an adult barn owl to do that for these chicks, so it was me. So I had to climb up into the attic every night actually, and put some pinky mice out for these birds until they fledged out of the attic. So that was really exciting, and I was hooked. So the owl species I've seen the most in southern New England are the great horned owl, and that's one of our most common owls. It has a wide range from North to South America all the way down to Tierra del Fuego. And there are actually 20 subspecies of great horned owl. And it's our American eagle owl. It's in the genus Bubo, with snowy owls also in that genus. But the rest of the Bubo species are eagle owls over in Europe and Asia. And great horned owls have plumicorns. And plumicorns are those feathers that stick up on the corners of the head that look like horns, or maybe even look like ears. They're not horns and they're not ears, but that's what plumicorns are those feathers that stick up off of the head of a great horned owl and some other owls as well. So my experiences with great horned owls occurred on this very osprey platform. This year, or in 2020, there was an actual osprey nesting on it. And this platform is in a riverbed, the Indian River in Clinton, Connecticut. And what's great about it is you can be up on the bank on the side of the river and basically be looking into the nest. And so these are some pictures I took this year. You're sort of just straight on looking into the nest. So in 2006, great horned owls nested on this osprey platform. It was amazing. You could just look right into the nest, and all of these pictures are taken through my scope. They're digiscope, so they may look close, but we were at a really safe distance. But to see the activities of great horned owls in their nest as the baby was developing and growing was really exciting. And I had to visit it every day to see what was happening. And there were some neat facial expressions and neat things going on. They were mobbed by crows, and the adult attacked crows. And when I was there with my scope looking, I looked around the river because there was only one adult in the nest with one chick. And when I scoped around the river, there was this big pine tree just up on the bank in somebody's yard. And when I scoped that, I saw the mate, the other owl, sitting in the pine tree facing the nest. So we know that this owl is keeping watch and making sure things are safe. So I learned that there's always 2 great horned owls around, and one's usually on the nest and the other one is around on watch, on safety watch. And I also learned that baby great horned owls have pink on the inside of their mouths. So that was really an amazing experience. I fell in love with great horned owls through that experience. The other owls species that I've seen a lot of, fortunately, is the snowy owl. And I've been up to Alaska where they breed, up in Barrow, Alaska. And as you know, snowy owls come down to the coast of New England in the winter. So you can see them fairly often. But there was that one year, October 2013 to February 2014, when we had an eruption of snowy owls coming in. And this map shows the yellow dots where all the sightings of snowy owls were, as far south as Florida and out to Bermuda. So it was a lot of snowy owls that year, and it seemed like every time you went out, you could see a snowy owl. Really exciting. And so what they think happened that year or the year prior was they had a really good breeding year. There were lots of lemmings up in the Arctic, and lemmings are what baby snowy owls eat. And this is a nest showing the eggs haven't even hatched, but it's loaded with lemmings ready to feed the young. And of course, up in the Arctic, they have their own refrigeration, right? So this was all set. So this is a picture of the nest from that previous breeding season. And so they had a bumper crop of babies, and a lot of babies wandered and made it down to many areas in the eastern US, mostly in the eastern US, but all the way down to Florida. Incredible. And this was one of the young birds that was down here that winter. And this was the one that people thought looked like Eddie Munster. It had the same head pattern as Eddie Munster's haircut. So that's how Eddie Munster gets into my talk. That was the Eddie Munster owl. And then the other owl I've seen a lot of is the barred owl. And barred owls are absolutely beautiful. There was a November 2018 when it seemed like every time you went out, you could see a barred owl. So we thought that this was another eruption, like the snowy owl eruption. But they found some of these barred owls dead, and they looked at them, and these owls were starving. And so the thought was that the rodent population had crashed. These birds were starving, and they didn't care that they were out in the open being seen. They had to eat, and that's why we were seeing so many barred owls. So very interesting when you see owls in these kinds of situations, what's behind it. So this is a barred owl picture that I took from this winter at a local state park here in Connecticut. And you can see how well it blends in, even though it's pretty much sitting out in the open. So I want you to get your owl eye on and look at this picture. Oops. Oh, I lost the picture. Oh, we'll get to that later. To pick out a barred owl. Sorry about that. I got ahead of myself. So the special skills that you need when you're looking for owls are ambition, knowledge, patience, lots of patience, fieldcraft, and luck. And I'm going to go through each of those. And I think you all have the ambition already. If you're looking at this talk tonight, it's because you want to go looking for owls. And when you're looking for owls, you spend a lot of time finding other things in the trees, like this raccoon. But it's going to require some determination, which I think you probably already have, and some hard work and some good time in the field. Louis Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind, which means you want to learn something about the owls that you're looking for. So what species are possible in New England? And you probably know all these 8 species that you can see in southern New England. And I'll go through them just quickly. The barn owl, which is really hard to see in Connecticut, and I think it's pretty rare in Rhode Island as well. But interestingly, it's the most widely distributed owl in the world. If you see the green color on this map, you can see its worldwide distribution. There are almost 30 subspecies and 9 subspecies of barn owl in the Americas. It's rare in Rhode Island, rare in Connecticut, endangered in Connecticut. You don't have too many breeding records. And in the US, barn owls are strictly nocturnal. And I say that because I spend a lot of time in England, and in England, you can see barn owls flying during the day. So in different places they live, they have sort of different lifestyles. Barn owls like barns to breed in near open areas, farm fields, marshes, landfills, things like that. And so a few years ago in Ecuador, up at Antisana National Park out of Quito, there was this old farm building on this open expanse of land. And I just looked at it and I said, wow, that's a great place for a barn owl. And we looked in the broken window and there was a barn owl roosting right inside that old barn. So they're named barn owls because they like barns. Any old building with access, broken windows or openings. I've seen barn owls in underpasses. As long as it's near open fields for hunting, that's fine. And I'm gonna play you the call of the barn owl, though you probably, a lot of you already know this, but if you're out at night and you hear this, blood-curdling scream, that's your cue that you have a barn owl somewhere near you. A few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now, I was looking at pink-footed geese in this field with these Canada geese, and it was near these beautiful big old barns, and I thought, wow, that's a great spot for a barn owl, but I didn't go. It was private property, but man, this perfect habitat for barn owls. So one of the ways you can find out where you should go looking for barn owls is to use eBird. And you probably all know eBird. It's the Cornell website, which is kind of a database of sightings that people put in. And you can search and find out historical information where barn owls have been reported. So I put in barn owl for Rhode Island, and I got these markers, these blue markers that tell you that there have been sightings. And let's look a little bit closer. Aquidneck Island, where Statuus Point is, obviously, but I was interested in this area up here. I don't know this area. You guys probably do. It's a place called Glen Farm. And this particular sighting I clicked on was from 2016 in the afternoon, and there were 3 barn owls seen there, and he's got pictures of them on top of the buildings. So you can get some information about where you might go looking for the different species of owls by just researching a little bit in eBird. Screech owl is another common owl throughout southern New England. They like urban and suburban areas. Can you see the screech owl in this picture? It's right against the trunk here, really blending in. This is a gray phase screech owl. They use nest cavities in trees, so they like hollow branches of trees or hollowed out old snags. And they'll also use nest boxes. And of course, you know screech owl. Let me just see if I can pull up their song. Okay, oops, come on, we can do this. And this is one you already know. It's called a whinny. And my sister tells me she's been hearing this recently where she lives in Greenwich outside. So I'm not sure what that's about. It's a little early for them to be thinking about breeding, but maybe it's just that they're, marking their territory. But listen for screech owls and you'll know they're around. Now I searched screech owl on eBird and you see all of these markers. They're much more common than the barn owl. And again, you can go in and click each one and see what the idea behind the report is. And I'll make a note about eBird that if you're doing some research about owls in eBird or any bird actually, they consider owls to be sensitive species, and they are, and they're easily disturbed. So sometimes the eBird report is either delayed or hidden to protect owls from over-visitation, because a lot of people use eBird for this kind of research. But eBird can still be useful for historical information. And if you kind of go with that and learn about the right habitat for birds, it can help you figure out where to go. And you can search on eBird about sensitive species and how they're reported on eBird and find out more. But I just wanted to point that out. So great horned owl, I've already talked about a little bit. It's a fairly common owl. They really like to nest in conifers. They're very adaptable, so they can be in all sorts of habitats. They nest early in the year, and their courtship actually happens in the fall. So you'll hear them calling to each other in the fall. And as I mentioned, they don't make their own nest, but if you know the call, you'll know that they're in your area. So let me pull up that one and see if I can play that for you just quickly. So that very low-pitched bellowing call, which I'm sure many of you have heard. And at this point here in Connecticut, I'm monitoring a great horned owl nest, which I think is up in a pine tree. And they will be on eggs now. This is toward the end of February, they're on eggs, and the chicks will hatch possibly in March. So they are really into their breeding cycle. They're a very early nester. A few years ago in May, an evening in May, 10 o'clock in the evening, I was walking at Lake Saltonstall, which is a beautiful regional water authority property next to where I live. And I heard this sound. Let's see if I can find it for you. And I wasn't really that familiar with that sound, and I didn't know what it was. I know a lot of the spring warbler sounds and spring migrant sounds, but that one I didn't know. But so I followed it into the woods a little bit, and I found this guy. I'll show you closer. It was a young great horned owl sitting on top of that snag calling to be fed, and I'm sure the parents were around. This is very much zoomed in. I didn't get too close. But it was so cool to find this bird, and it was way up off the ground, so fairly safe. But I didn't dare go near it because I knew the parents would be around and tending to it. Barred owls, I also talked about a little bit. They're also fairly common and widespread here. They like wet areas. They're sometimes called the bog owl, and they like mature, dense woods where the ground is soggy. Great horned owls will drive them out of the territory if you have both, so that's kind of a bummer. And they begin nesting a little bit later in the season, in March here in southern Connecticut and southern New England. They will use cavities for nesting or open nests, so they're kind of a versatile owl. And they do that Who Cooks for You, which you probably have heard. I will play it for you anyway. Let's see. How about this one? So you know that. Who cooks for you? Who's cooking for me tonight, by the way? Anyway, so barred owls are one of the species in southern New England. Now, long-eared owl is a little bit tougher, and I have to admit that this picture of the long-eared owl is from Lesbos, Greece, the Greek island that we go to. Long-eared owls have a very wide, worldwide range. Again, you look at the blue color on this map, and you can see that they really are widespread. Very rare in Rhode Island, very shy and secretive, and easily flushed. They nest north of here, and in the winter, they'll roost communally in coastal conifer stands. And in January and February, they're flying at dusk. So they are a hard one to find, long-eared owls are. And sometimes you can find them day roost. You see owl in this picture. Just see how it blends in against the trunk. Very difficult to pick out. So requires a lot of hard looking, but these are all long-eared owls. And this is a place in Serbia in Eastern Europe where long-eared owls come and congregate in this town square in the winter. So I have to see this. There can be sometimes 800 owls in this big town square. It's a spectacle. And so I've actually organized a trip to Serbia next January in the hopes of seeing this amazing spectacle. So that's a good place to see long-eared owls. Short-eared owls we have, again, another rarity in Rhode Island. They are also another wide-ranging owl, uncommon, migrant, hunting coastal dunes and marshes. They have a very flappy, unique flight, and I have mistaken gulls, or I've mistaken short-eared owls for gulls. So watch your gulls around the coast. So sometimes they'll be flying during the day and it's a short-eared owl, not a gull. This is from experience, I'll tell you that. excuse me, northern saw-whet owl is another rare breeder and migrates through in the fall in numbers sometimes. A very small owl, just about 8 inches tall. They like to roost in dense thickets at the tops of conifers, so they're kind of hard to see. And I'll play you their call so you can listen and know if you have a saw-whet owl outside where you live. And then you can go looking for it. Let's see which one, HH2. But the other thing you want to listen for, and how I found most of my saw-whet owls, is listening for mobbing songbirds. When songbirds are mobbing, I always go and try to see what it is. And sometimes it's an owl, and that's what happened in this particular case. Snowy owl, you get snowy owls in Rhode Island. In the winter, it's a winter bird for us in coastal areas, but sometimes on inland farms, as long as it's open habitat, as they recognize from their Arctic habitat, that's where you can find snowy owls. Now, the rarer owls that you might want to be aware of are things like boreal owl. And the Rhode Island Avian Records Committee says that it's a very rare visitor with several records before the 1900s and none since. But there was a boreal owl in Central Park. That was my life boreal owl, actually, behind Tavern on the Green one winter. So always be aware. And the difference between saw-whet and boreal, they're very similar, is boreal will have spots on its forehead, whereas saw-whet has stripes. So be aware of that. Hawk owl is another one. It's a boreal forest owl, but it could come south. In 1906, there was a record from West Greenwich, Rhode Island. Keep an eye out for northern hawk owl. And burrowing owl, here's the range map of burrowing owl. It's mostly in the west, and you can see it if you go down to Florida or the Caribbean. But in 1963 in Newport, there was a burrowing owl report in November. So you never know, they could show up. And great gray owl, mostly a western species and in the northern boreal forest, but it has been recorded in Rhode Island. Oh, what a bird to see if you get that. Interestingly, that 1996 sighting in Connecticut, we also had great gray owl in 1996, and it worked its way east on the coast from Hammonasset State Park to East Lyme and probably over to Westerly. So very interesting to see that. So you know a little bit about the owls that you're looking for and even the rare ones. And now you need patience. You need patience and time in the field because owls are hard to find. And the more time you spend, the better chance you'll have of coming up with some good sightings. So let me talk about how you might act in the field when you're looking for owls. And this information about fieldcraft can be applied to general birding. So see what you think. So fieldcraft involves how you behave in the field. When you have to know when you're going to look, get in the groove for owl watching, blend in, move quietly and slowly, listen carefully, and look for clues. So someone said, well, when do you look for owls? Well, on trips, we're looking for them all the time. But here in southern New England, when I hear an owl calling, that's when I go looking for it. And I used to live in a place where barred owls called all day long outside my window, and they would always lure me out to see them. So when they're calling, go looking for them. I like to go out in winter because there's not much vegetation on the trees, not many leaves on the trees, and a lot of the owls like short-eared and long-eared spend their winters with us, so that's a good time to go. And then when the young owls are in the nest or leaving the nest, that's a good time to go looking for owls because the adults are very actively feeding them. So March through April is a good time, although as it gets into May, you're dealing with the leaves on the trees, which can be difficult, but those are some times to go looking. So what do I mean by get in the groove? That's a phrase that I got from Bob Metcalf from the Boston Outdoor School. I took an animal tracking course with him because I like to do animal tracking as well. And he says when he goes out into the field, he makes sure he gets in the moment. He takes one step and stays for 5 minutes without moving and takes in everything that he can hear, everything that he can see, and maximizes his awareness. He focuses on the task at hand, because I know when I go out in the field, a lot of times I'm dragging along all of my thoughts with me about other things, and they get in the way of noticing the clues that you need to find to notice, to see owls. So blending in. Now, owls don't see too much in color, but they might see the difference between a bright orange outfit and my partner Steve's tropical wear there. Blending in is sort of wearing field clothes that sort of aren't too obtrusive. And the main thing you want to avoid is white. So I put this picture in because this was a British twitch that Steve and I created. We found a scarlet tanager on the Isles of Scilly in southwest England, a real rare bird. And when the word got out, within 20 minutes, we had a group of 200 people birding. And you can see many of them are dressed in these dull colors to blend in. But when I look at this picture, all I see is this guy's white hat. White is really a warning color in nature, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. So try to avoid white when you go out into the wilds looking for owls. And I think there was a whole book on that. Good birders don't wear white. So you're actually going to get out there and just look, and you want to look for things that look odd. So in this evergreen tree, there was this dark blob, and when I got my binoculars on it, it was a great horned owl looking back at me. Here's the one I wanted to show you. So you can see the barred owl in this picture, right? It's kind of easy, but he's blending in because he's the same color as the background. So now I want you to look at this picture and tell me if you can see an owl. And when I look at it, I see the red leaves. You know, what sticks out at you? Red leaves, red berries, and then some weird thing down here. And that is indeed the barred owl. I couldn't even get a good picture. He was so tucked in there. But just looking for different things in the environment may help you. My friend says, I look at every hole to see if there's an owl in it. And she sees a lot of owls that way. So, you know, tree cavities, a lot of owls like to sit in them. So look at every hole. And this is a little screech owl in a tree cavity. Look at every trunk and every hole. So you see how you have to really pay attention. You also want to be listening for owl sounds, juveniles begging, birds mobbing and scolding. So this is my friend Frank Gallo, and you might know him. You may have run into him. He's a fairly well-known birder, but he does the best barred owl call that I know. Sometimes it sounds better than the owl. So I was working out in my garden here in Guilford, Connecticut several years ago, and I hear the barred owl, and I think it's Frank actually coming to visit me and announcing himself with a barred owl call. So I go on with my weeding, and Frank never appears. But I realize that I'm hearing the barred owl call still, and all these little songbirds calls as well. And I go around to the other side of the house, and there indeed is a barred owl, if I'd only been paying better attention, sitting right off my back deck. And I found baby barred owls by listening very early in the morning. One morning I was up and heard some funny call and followed it into the woods and found these baby barred owls. So listening, following calls. This is a pair of great horns that was outside my house about 6 weeks ago, and it was getting dusk. It was getting dark, so the picture's a little bit dark, but they were calling to each other, and I just walked down the trail and got a view of them. So when they're calling, follow the call. Now, mobbing and scolding. You know that songbirds love to mob owls. And I pulled this picture off the web. I think the caption was Cowboy Crow. And I think it's probably a real picture because crows hate great horned owls and they will mob and try to chase them away. So if you find birds like blue jays or little songbirds that are mobbing and scolding, check it out, see what they're after. Sometimes it's a snake, sometimes it's an owl. And again, that's how I found this little guy, by listening to the songbirds and going into the brush and finding it. You also want to look for clues, and clues like pellets, whitewash, animal parts, nests, and day roosts. I'll talk a little bit about each of those. You know about owl pellets, right? It's the indigestible parts of their prey that they can't digest, so they cough up a pellet which has bones and hair, and they drop that wherever they're roosting. And sometimes the pellets start to disintegrate and fall apart, and you can see the bones in the pellets and a little bit of the fur as they fall apart. So if you can find pellets, you need to look up, because probably above the pellet is an owl, or was an owl sitting. So I'm always looking for pellets, and I'm always looking directly up above the pellet. So sorry, my front deck is getting shoveled right now. That's what all that noise is. So anyway, this is another picture from the Greek island of Lesbos, and we had a tour there one spring, and we were back at the hotel getting ready for dinner, and I had forgotten something in the van. So I walked out in the parking lot to get it, and I just was looking down at the ground and saw this. And so of course this is a pellet and some whitewash. And I looked up in the tree above me, and there was a long-eared owl just above my head. So noticing those things on the ground, look up, and hopefully there's an owl sitting there. So I went back into the dining room, and people were coming in for dinner. And I said, there's a long-eared owl out here in the tree. And the entire dining room emptied out and came out and saw this beautiful bird. It was really cool. And all from noticing this little pellet and the whitewash. So whitewash just pretty much looks like spilled white paint. It's very thick in consistency. It's the excrement of owls. But if you can see whitewash, that means, again, there's been an owl above there dropping some whitewash. And here's some more whitewash on the trunk of a pine tree. And you have to be careful with pine trees because they bleed white sap. So be careful thinking that that is whitewash. That's actually sap from the injury of the nail being nailed into that trunk. So if it streams straight down, it's probably tree sap. But whitewash will be in piles or splattered around. I was in Wallkill, New York a few weeks ago looking for owls, and I was just walking along the edge of the field and looked into the forest and saw this, and I'm like, what is that? Who spilled white paint there? Well, there's no white paint, there's no painters there. So I got closer and saw that it was whitewash and pellets under an owl roost. The owl didn't happen to be there at that moment, but I did find the roost, which was pretty cool. And I think this was probably a long-eared owl. And animal parts, and I learned from the Diana Ross incident that when a great horned owl nest falls, there's lots of animal parts in the nest. And that was all on the ground. I forgot to mention that before, half rat bodies and things like that. So animal parts can be a clue that there's an owl nest above you. Now, this is an owl nest that I'm keeping an eye on again this year, and it doesn't look like much. It's up in a pine tree, but it's just a dark blob, and I'm pretty sure it's active. I'm pretty sure the owls are on eggs right now, so they've gone a little bit stealth. But the way I found this was below this pine tree is a lot of pellets and a lot of whitewash. There's some pellets that were under the tree, excuse me. And so I just kept going back and seeing more and more pellets, and that was my clue that there was a nest up there. So that's something to watch out for. Now, day roosts are tough because you can see how well these owls blend into their background. And it's a matter of really scrutinizing tree bark or heavy thickets of evergreens. It's hard to find day roosts, and it's really critical not to disturb them if you find them. So let's see if you can apply your fieldcraft skills. This is an easy one. Can you see the owl in this picture? And you're just looking for this dark blob here. This is a barred owl. Okay. What about in this picture? Can you see the owl in this picture? And this is a tough one. It's pretty far away, but I did notice something about this picture I'll show you. There's a great horned owl sitting up in that tree, way tucked inside. And what I noticed was that bright white spot here. They have a white throat, and that's what stuck out for me. And I don't know if you can really see that here, but that's what it is. It's sitting inside. So tough, but it's a matter of looking very carefully. and that's how I picked it out. So I am doing some work for the Connecticut Bird Atlas, and this is part of my block, this beautiful lake that I live next door to. And I've been really trying to find evidence that barred owls and screech owls are nesting there. I know they're probably nesting there, but finding evidence of them, really tough. So last June, I think maybe June or July, I was walking along the trail and I saw this. And I stopped and looked at it. And this is whitewash, whitewash, whitewash. Little different consistency from the great horned owl whitewash. And more whitewash. And there was even a couple of little pellets there. Excuse me. And I looked directly up, and it's a big oak tree with this branch, and there's a hole there in the branch. It's a closer look. Okay. And I think what happened was whatever was in there, and I think it might have been screech owls, fledged, came out of the hole, and all that whitewash ended up below. So I think I missed my chance there, but I know where this hole is, and I'll go back and check it next year or this year. I went back a few days later, and there was some funky nesting material coming out of the hole. And then a few days later, there was a black rat snake in the hole. So I don't know, but noticing that evidence has clued me up to go back this year and see what's going on. So keeping owls safe, I really want to stress that you want the welfare and safety of the bird to be the highest priority. And this is that little baby great horned owl. I took this picture from the trail. You can see how vulnerable this bird is if a lot of people start coming around, or dogs. They're on the ground and very, very vulnerable. So, if you're quiet and slow and really want to limit the disturbance, and if the owl looks agitated or stressed, that means maybe you need to back off. And I liked this illustration from the Black Swamp Bird Observatory of long-eared owls in a relaxed position. You can see here on the left, and then an agitated position. They actually stretch themselves out to try to blend into the background. And you can see the eyes are open wide. If the bird looks like that, you might be a little bit too close and the bird is getting stressed. So if you find a nest, watch it from a safe distance. Don't advertise the location. And that's really hard, because when you find something as cool as an owl nest, you want to let everybody know, but it can really cause cumulative disturbance. Lots of visitors trying to see it, lots of disturbance. So try to keep it to yourself. I know that's tough, but it's better, I think, for the owls. And really using tapes, during breeding season especially, is really not good for the owls. And I don't use tapes anyway, so I just don't recommend that they be used. So again, the Black Swamp Bird Observatory has tips for responsible owl viewing, and I mentioned some already. Keep quiet, maintain a respectful distance, don't call, lure, bait, or feed the owls, respect private property, respect fellow observers. And if your picture causes the owl to flush, that's not a very good thing. So the welfare of the bird should be of the utmost importance. So if you want to travel to see owls, I'll tell you about a few places that are really good. And one is the Greek island of Lesbos, which Dan has been to. Here it is. It's one of the Greek islands off the coast of Turkey. Fantastic migration place. It's one of the migration hotspots of the world. You get cool birds like the Eurasian bee eater, and we go in the spring, so there's these big fields of flowers. And we have a few stakeouts for owls there. This is a little parking lot with a bunch of eucalyptus trees, and it's such a long known stakeout that someone inscribed owl on the tree and put an arrow to look up. And this is where we find Eurasian scops owl, sometimes up to a dozen Eurasian scops owls. They seem to like to roost communally in these eucalyptus trees, and they blend in fairly well. They're not always that easy to find, but a very cute little owl, sort of the equivalent of maybe our screech owl, Eurasian scops owl. And this, I think I'm getting around to, is my favorite owl, the little owl. It's a relative of the burrowing owl, same genus. And on Lesbos, these birds are so friendly. They're always out in the open during the day. We see many, many little owls every day. A little owl a day keeps the doctor away. It's just a beautiful little thing. And then occasionally we will get the Lawnyard Owls as well, as I mentioned. And usually they're nesting by the time we get to Lesbos, so we can get some views of Lawnyard Owls. So it's a great place for owl watching and spring migration birding. Serbia, I mentioned, this is Serbia in Eastern Europe, and that's where those owls congregate in the winter. They are also things like white-tailed eagles and lots of woodpeckers to see, and bullfinches, and this congregation of long-eared owls in the town of Kikinda. Just incredible view. So that's something I really need to see. Looking forward to that. Finland, a wonderful country, and probably one of the best places in the world to go looking for owls. Finland has a lot of cool things, beautiful landscapes, capercaillies and hazel grouse and shorebirds in the spring heading north, rough. And it's a great place for owls. We work with a company in Finland that does a lot of conservation work with owls. So they set up nesting platforms for great gray owls. And they monitor the birds and make sure they're protected. Usually by the time we get there at the end of May, the great gray owls are feeding young. And so we get to see that kind of behavior. And things like northern hawk owl are also in their breeding cycle, also feeding young in Finland. So fantastic views and photography opportunities. Tangmoms or boreal owl, they put up nest boxes. So these birds are nesting as well, and they're monitoring them. Pygmy owl can be tough. This is a forest owl, but we usually can come up with some views of pygmy owl in Finland. And Ural owl, which can be also a little bit tough, but we usually can scare one up or find one. Japan, a fantastic place for birding in general, but for owls. The biggest owl in the world is in Japan. And we do a winter trip there where you can see the snow monkeys and the dancing cranes and the stellar sea eagles on the ice. But you walk down a snowy path, and at the end of the path is a bird sitting in a tree cavity, and it's a beautiful Ural owl catching the morning sun. So fantastic views of Ural owl in Japan. Usually we have 2 or 3 staked out. And then up in Hokkaido in the northern part of Japan, we stay in a guest house that's next to a stream. And here you can look out your window at night and see this, the world's largest owl, the Blakiston's fish owl, which lives on that little stream. And they've built a little pool and they put fish in it because it's a fish-eating owl. And you can just watch from your bedroom window Blakiston's fish owl, this amazing owl, catching fish in the pool and carrying them upstream and eating them and then coming back for more. So just an incredible experience. And this is a beautiful, beautiful bird, Blakiston's fish owl. And lots of places to go. Every tour we do, we look for owls for sure. This is ashy-faced owl. This is a relative of the barn owl, as you might guess, Dominican Republic. This is Brazil, the austral screech owl. In Colombia, this was just discovered in 2007, and we've seen that on our trip. So owls are everywhere and wonderful to see. So I just want to end up talking a little bit about owl conservation and what you can do to help owls, because a lot of them are suffering from loss of habitat. So protecting their habitat can help them. If you have evergreens that you can leave on your property, that's great. That's good cover for them. Trees with cavities, if it's safe to leave, or put up nest boxes because screech owls and other types of owls will use them. Don't throw food out along the road. It's when you have a banana in the car, you're driving someplace, throw the peel out. Well, the problem is that attracts rodents to the side of the road. And what do owls eat but rodents? And a lot of owls get hit by cars because they're feeding on the rodents that come to roadside food. Pesticides and rat poison are really bad for owls. They poison the rats. The owl eats the poisoned rat. You can see where that's going. Terrible, terrible. So if you can avoid those, you really can help owls. Cap your chimneys and exhaust pipes in your house. You may have seen this picture on Facebook in the past few weeks, a barred owl in somebody's fireplace. It got in the chimney and came down and they found it in the fireplace. So a chimney cap would help that situation to keep the owl out. You know, fake spider webs are used around Halloween, but if they're used outdoors, owls can get caught up in them, especially that's the time when saw-whet owls are migrating, right? So they can get caught up in the spider webs. Soccer nets, if you take them down off season, they'll last longer and maybe birds won't get caught up in them. And control your dogs and keep your cats indoors. That will all help protect owls. And here again is my great horned owl. Here, you can see it's right, this is a trail blaze. It's right along the trail. So if someone walks by with a dog that's loose or not under control, it could be a real terrible situation. So, you know, minimize your disturbance if you're going out looking for owls. Keep your owl roost locations private. Hard not to share. There's lots of resources which I can send along to you, Dan or Mike, to get to people if they're interested. There's a really good website about making nest boxes. That's a good pandemic project. And look at the blog of the great horned owl nest that I followed and young one that I followed last spring. You can just go to sunrisebirding.com/blog. There's a story of that there. And I want to thank Steve Bird, Frank Gallo, Frank Matlick for some pictures, David Lindo, Doug Rhoda, the Black Swamp Bird Observatory, our guides around the world that show us owls, and all of you owl lovers for listening tonight and watching. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. That was fantastic.
You're welcome.
Thank you for showing photos from owls, you know, locally all over the world. And I really appreciate covering, you know, what we can do to protect owls, especially, you know, the banana peel. That's something that we don't really think about, you know, outside of Mario Kart, you know, banana peel on the road being a problem, something we just don't really think about. So that was just fantastic. Thank you again.
Great. I set my share so I can see you. Hi, everybody. Well, thank you. Does anybody have any questions, or did you find questions from the chat?
We don't have any questions in the chat. If you have anything you'd like to type into the chat, feel free to do so.
Well, I have a question. What's the last owl anyone has seen?
Oh,
I've seen a barred owl.
Yay.
On a trail, just like I found it in the woods. It was just off the trail, about eye level. And it would blended right in. And I had a student with me because the student and I bird every week. And it was probably the greatest thrill of his birding life. So it was awesome to be there with him.
Great. Awesome.
I actually saw a short-eared owl this morning.
Awesome. Where was that?
It was off of Moonstone Beach Road. And unfortunately, I was focused on photographing some snow geese and then just kind of saw it in the corner and didn't get a good photograph of it, but it was pretty amazing, low, flying over the field.
Great. Yeah, that's a good spot for them. It's not always easy there, but that's awesome. Great.
and in the chat, Marielle Smith mentioned she found there's a great horn and a osprey nest in a great swamp. It's a pretty interesting record. And Al Shank says he has a pair of barred owls in the backyard for years. One roosts in the same spot 4 days a week. Nice. Never found a pellet, however. Oh, he wants to know, he hasn't found a pellet. Any ideas why?
Well, that's interesting, because under a roost, often they'll drop pellets, but maybe that's not where it feeds. Maybe that's where it hunts from, and it's already dropped its pellet at its, day roost or whatever. Yeah. And pellets aren't all that easy to find. You have to know what you're looking for. If you can find the bones, that's a real good clue. But sometimes there's a lot of fur in them and they just look like something that blends into the ground. So interesting though.
So this is Jana.
Hi.
Hi. On the whitewash, now, do other birds leave whitewash? Because I sometimes see that.
For sure. Yeah,
So,
the excrement of birds is usually white. In songbirds, they have a little dark morsel in it.
right,
And
right.
of course, if you know where peregrine falcons are nesting on a cliff, you'll see whitewash, you
Yeah.
know. So
But
I'm always looking under trees for
But
whitewash.
would it usually be a fairly sizable amount? Because I do look for it, but I
Yeah,
rarely,
it looks like splattered paint to me. And
yeah,
sometimes if like that one roost I showed you, that, you know, that's like months,
yeah,
maybe years of whitewash built up,
yeah, okay,
all white. And then the other one with the really sparse whitewash, which I think might be Screech Owl, I just happened to notice white drops on the ground. They didn't look like the big whitewash great horns. So it's a matter of just kind of noticing and trying to see what you can see.
yeah.
But, you know,
I also
so,
just wanted to say Lesbos is a great place because I've actually lived there for a while
oh my
and
God.
went birding there, so it's fabulous.
Yes,
So
it's my second home.
I would love to
I
go
love
back.
it. Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah.
We also have a question in the chat from Kate Rafey. Said, can you say more about the wildlife conservation work you have done?
Oh, well, you know, that's my dream, to do more wildlife conservation work. What we try to do with the tours is work with conservation groups so that when we bring birders into a country, that bringing them is supporting the work. So this Finnish company that we work with, you know, they throughout the whole year, actually throughout the whole winter, they follow the owls, and then they're there for us to see when we get there. So we really like to support them. You know, I guess that's my dream. My next dream is to just be a philanthropist and do conservation work. I don't do enough of it, I don't feel, but it's really important. Yeah. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you, Gina. And it actually something I would say, it is really important. You know, companies that use local guides when they go to other places, besides having that local knowledge, bringing that money into the economy. I mean, I'm gonna, I guess, talk
Yeah.
about for example, like my background here is Darien. When we were in Darien, part of that was going to see the local, you know, tribes, the indigenous people that live there, and the artwork that they create is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And it's birders. So it's
Yep.
direct conservation.
Yeah. Yeah. Really important. Yeah. Great.
Excellent. We have any other questions?
I was going to say,
Hi, Suzanne.
hi. You know, what's amazing is now with the bird cams up on the internet, the one that is so surprising is the barred owl cam, and seeing what odd food items these birds bring back to the nest.
Yeah.
Crayfish and live snakes and frogs and fish. I can't believe barred owls. Where are they? Fish.
Well, they like swampy areas, and
Yeah.
I suppose any piece of flesh is fair game, you know, if they can catch it. You know, how do they catch a fish? But
Yep. And
yeah.
the birds there are a lot more birds than I thought.
They eat a lot more birds. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. I didn't mention, but that little tree cavity that I'm watching is 300 steps from the great horned owl nest. And that blows my mind. I would think everything would want to be away from that great horned owl nest, but also under that great horned owl nest, one of the pine trees is old and it has a lot of cavities in it, and there's squirrels that breed in there. So it's like they're right under the great horned owl nest. Somehow it must all be a balance, but really interesting things you notice when you're looking at all this stuff.
Also, one year in Seekonk near here, there's a great blue heron rookery behind a big plaza mall, Home Depot, and there was a great horned owl nest in one of their nests one year. I haven't seen anything since. Do they go back to the same nest?
Well, I'm hoping that this pair I'm watching is going back to the same nest, as long as the nest hasn't fallen apart. And the thing is, they get there way before the osprey or the great blue herons or whatever start nesting. So they have first dibs, really, as long as the nest hasn't fallen down. I mean, every windstorm we get, I go down the next day and I'm like, oh God, I hope it didn't fall down, but it hasn't yet. So.
That's interesting. To use an osprey nest because it's so exposed. I always think of them, being in a more protected tree area.
Yeah, more cover. Yeah, but I have read that has been reported before. So it just must be. It's too tempting. This open nest that's all ready for you.
Yeah.
Go for it. But not a good place really, but good to watch.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Excellent. And that actually also answered another question we had in the chat, which is, do owls tend to return to the same borrowed nest or locations year after year? So also answered that question there. I think that's we have for the questions this evening. So, Gina, thank you for joining us, teaching us about owls, how to find owls, and how to keep them safe.
Yes, good luck, and tell me about your adventures and when you find things. I would love to hear if any of this helped, or what you learned, or what you know that I don't know yet about it. It's just I love the learning when I'm observing wildlife, so it's fun. And now I'm going to go and look for those webcams. I want to see that. I want to see the barred owls.
Yeah, they're great. The barred owl checked out the nest. It's on Cornell, the All About Birds.
Oh, yes.
And the barred owl just checked out its yearly nest, and there's film footage of a flying squirrel went to the platform bird feeder at night, and a screech owl came and got it.
Oh
no.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a jungle out there.
It's a bird eat bird world and all that.
Wow.
Yeah. Have fun with that. Yeah, it's fun.
Yep. Yeah.
Also, I'm impressed you've seen the Blakiston's fish owl in Japan. Because there's a new book called Owls of the Eastern Ice about them in southwestern Russia.
Yeah.
Read.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That place is very controlled because they don't want people running around all over looking at the Blakiston's fish owl. So when you get there, you're supposed to go right into your room and not meander outside. Well, both times I've been there, we've been unpacking the van and the owl shows up, like, a stone's throw away from us. And it doesn't care. It's feeding on the fish, and we're freaking out because we're supposed to not be out there. We have to get our stuff into the guest house, and yet this owl is there. And so we're getting a little reputation for the owl showing up, because people will stay up all night and not see that owl come in.
Really, that's amazing.
Really lucky. Yeah, really lucky with that.
And so easy.
Well,
this guy who went to Russia, I read the book, incredible stories. It's so difficult environment, studying them, and he was doing research, but anyway.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, that was easy.
Yeah. And that particular guest house is funding research on those birds too, because they're really threatened by water projects and dams and things like that. So that's another part of the conservation piece, So.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you all for being here. It's really nice to see you. And
thank you.
Enjoy and stay safe, and let's get through this craziness and get out there birding.
All right, we'll get through this one bird at a time. Thank you.